First of all, I'm going to introduce myself. And I'm excited because Dr. Bronner's and Lilia Vergara is one of my clients, and very rarely do you get a chance to speak on a panel with your client. But Automation Workz is a behavior informatics firm. We do culture audits, tech training, but we mainly look at insights and help corporations look at insights within their own culture to figure out how they can become more profitable. And Lilia and I started a project, was it 2020?
2020.
2020, in the middle of the pandemic. And she's going to explain to you who Dr. Bronner's is, and then we'll set the backdrop of how our relationship evolved and how this panel evolved. Lilia, tell us a little bit about Dr. Bronner's.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Lilia Vergara. I've been with Dr. Bronner's for almost 13 years, heading up their HR department. And for those of you that don't know who Dr. Bronner's is, it's a natural, organic, and fair trade soap company. So if you haven't seen them in the back, we have some citrus bar soaps in the back, so they're a sample size. We also have some lavender hand sanitizers, as well as up here in the front, so you come say hi. We have some liquid soap of lavender, unscented, and peppermint, and then we have some lip balms. So that's who we are. You may have already seen us. We're in huge stores like Target, Walmart, Costco, and all the way down to where we initially started is in the natural stores.
Great. Now let's talk a little bit about our assignment. Now, I have to tell you, let's give backdrop. That we were in the middle of the pandemic. Everybody remember the pandemic?
Yeah.
And I was a startup at the time. And I decided that while everybody was sitting back, that I was going to steal a lot of people's customers. So when nobody else was traveling, I was traveling all over the country, right?
Yep.
And I landed at a conference called Sustainable Brands and met with one of their quality people that says, it was right after George Floyd, that we wanted to do something to figure out our diversity situation. I was like, okay. I didn't think it was going to go anywhere, but then they introduced me to Lilia and their president, and we introduced a culture audit. Now, what is a culture audit? A culture audit is where we look at the entire culture of a company, not just HR, but every department of how it relates to the culture, and decide whether it was good or bad and if there was going to make any changes, and we made recommendations. So this is the backdrop. But mind you, Dr. Bronner's was selling hand sanitizer in the middle of the pandemic.
And soap.
And soap. And tell them how crazy that was.
Oh my gosh. So yes, as the world was shutting down, we were still running. We were considered an essential business. We were manufacturing our soaps and our hand sanitizers, and orders were just coming and coming and coming. And so we really had to ramp up really quick, as you guys saw how quick things got when it was a shutdown. So we literally had to staff an entire second shift in a week. And it was like, we need people, we need hands, we need to really supply the world, because our product goes all over the world during this time. And it was nutty, as you can imagine. Everybody was scared, but like not sure what they were really scared of. And there was just all of this uncertainty that was going on. And yeah, when it hit San Diego and it was like the state shut down, it was like, oh gosh, this is serious.
So what made you in this craziness? Because it was crazy. She made it sound real polite, but it was crazy because they were selling so much hand sanitizer. It was just insane.
Yeah.
What made you in the middle of this insanity decide that it was time for a culture audit?
Yeah, so the culture audit came about when we really started to look at our demographics. For those of you that may not know, Dr. Bronner's does have an all-one report every year, and we are super transparent with our consumers on where does our money go, what causes do we support, what does our landscape look of who our customers are, as well as who works for Dr. Bronner's. So we're very transparent on how many women, what our diversity looks like within the organization. And so it looks great. When you look at it on paper, it looks wonderful. But we really wanted to look at where are we at as an organization, especially with everything that was going on with Black Lives Matter. We really wanted to be part of that and really be an advocate and a partner during that, scariness of where everybody was feeling, that fear of who am I? Does the color of my skin really, is that going to get me in trouble? Do I need to be more careful? So we as an organization wanted to make sure that we were tapping into that and making sure that we were looking at our demographics as well.
Now tell me, what was the backdrop? Because when we first suggested the culture audit, a couple of executives wanted us just to focus on HR, and I was very adamant that we were going to look under every rock there was. What was the feeling when I said that?
Yeah, which it makes sense, especially if we are such a transparent company. We wanted to make sure that we weren't just going to look at what does our population look like, what does our culture look like, but also how are we representing our product to the world, and that meant everything from marketing and PR. So yeah, it's a little scary, and I know a lot of us, even when we do surveys and we do audits, we always want to know, but then when the results come in, you're like, oh my gosh, do I really want to know? At least that's how I feel. But it's one of those that you want to know so you can make some changes, if any, and really looking to experts like you to make sure that we have those right recommendations so we can really go in the right direction.
Now, I asked a lot of questions and I gathered a lot of data. About midway through, people got really nervous because I was compiling a lot of data. How did you feel about that?
Yes, I was also very nervous.
Why?
Well, there was just a lot of information for any of you, I'm sure, when you are showing what your, I don't want to say, I don't know. I keep everything pretty close to the chest.
Yeah, you do.
Yes.
You do.
And so for me to open everything up and really be transparent was really like, ooh, okay. But yeah, we had to trust. We had to trust and really be, this is what we agreed to. And actually, I was one of the ones that was like a fan about it. Like, let's get it done. But yes, I was very nervous around it. But there was, so you asked, why was I nervous? Okay, so and I don't know about you, but sometimes you work in HR and you do things because you understand how it happened. So as we were going through the data and I was getting a lot of questions from Ida, I was like, oh gosh, that's not, I know what it looks like, but it's not. So one example was we had an application tracking system that was very clunky.
Oh.
Yeah, very clunky. And so we would just tell applicants, just find any position, put your information in there. We know we're going to be hiring you. Like, we already know it's happening. And we just need to get you in the system. But if anybody knows anything about data, bad data is trash. So as I was looking at the information, I was like, okay, but I got to tell you about this. And this is why it looks like this. So, yeah, that's when I started to get a little nervous around, okay, we really have to make some changes.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. As we were getting through the data, and then I told you that when we were compiling the data, we collected data from every department. And when we finally got finished with the data, it turned out to be 220 pages. So when I shared that with you, that I was going to produce the full report for all of the executives, what ran through your mind when you heard the number 220 pages?
I was hoping there was a lot of graphs.
Which it was.
Pictures.
It was.
But I knew that was going to be good information. I knew that there was going to be some good recommendations. There was somebody looking at our process as an organization objectively. So it was really nice to know, okay, this is going to make us better. So there was 200 pages worth. So I knew that was going to be a long presentation.
Now, this is how I started off the presentation. How many people use this metric, revenue per employee? Does anybody use that to measure HR? Raise your hand if you use that metric. Great, great, great. So when I start off with, this is how the report started off with this particular metric. When you saw that, what did you think?
I was a little surprised, to be honest with you, because some of these companies, you think they have it together, and they don't. These are huge billion-dollar companies. We're talking about the Johnson & Johnson's and the Procter & Gamble and Unilever. So these are huge companies. So to know that we were ranked next to them and we were able to see the revenue per employee, that felt really good. In the sense of like, okay, we are working with our competitors.
Great. And then when we were in the middle of the actual audit, I actually talked a lot about the 34 diversities of thought. Because I know we initially started this with ethnic diversity, but then I kind of expanded it to the 34 diversities. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those, I appreciated the sessions and the information, because some of our, maybe some of our management weren't familiar with it, but it was really good to know that we were going to be including all that in our process.
Because when we looked at we didn't just look at ethnic diversity, we looked at political diversity, we looked at generational diversity, we looked at 34 different elements of diversity and expanded what we considered diverse. And so we realized that as we started to go down that conversation, we started off with the BIPOC community, and then as we started to expand, what did you hear back from them when we started to expand the diversity conversation?
It felt, I think a lot of them appreciated that we were able to call out the different types of diversity, like age, generation, even within a culture or a ethnic group or race, there were also subgroups, if that makes sense. So we were able to really dive in and say, okay, like there's more than just, male or female. Like we're talking about real diversity of age, thought, education, language, religion. So it was really nice to be able to showcase that whole list of what makes us different.
Great, that sounds great. And so we eventually rolled out the report over 3 days, initially with the senior executives, and then we set aside my team a couple days to ask questions about their area, because that was the first time they all saw the report. And when we dug the report, we didn't just look at all of the beauty, we looked at the bad and the ugly. How did that go over?
Well, I think with any, when you get, that mark, it doesn't feel good. But I think what really helped was we were able to identify it and be able to say, okay, what are we going to do next? And again, it wasn't just from an HR standpoint, it was even from a marketing standpoint that we really started looking at how can we be more diverse? And based on what they saw at that point in time, it was like, okay, we do need, there is some room, so there's some opportunities here that we can really address and be good at.
Great. Now, on this particular assignment, most of the times when I do these audits, they never leave the executive space. But in this particular audit, I suggested, can we share the entire report with middle managers? What did you feel when I said that?
Well, like I said, I like to keep my cards close. I was very kind of like, oh, okay, this makes sense. Because, again, HR does not hire people. We recruit the people, but there are a lot of different managers that are hiring these folks. So it was good to share the information and to share it from the report. And I don't recall if they were in the actual presentation.
Not the original presentation.
Not the original one, yeah. But it was good for them to see it firsthand rather than hoping that the department head or manager or director would share it. So it was good to have them see it and see it for what it was written rather than hoping that they explained it right. If that makes sense.
Yeah, because one of the things I was very impressed about is that the middle managers were very excited about their rollout. which I've never seen that excitement before, because normally they come in, the middle managers have dread for meetings. But for the first time, I remember in the survey that the middle managers like, oh my God, they really share everything with us. What did that do for your culture?
It did create this sense of trust because we are so transparent with our customers. Everything from where our material comes from to how many employees we have in this all one report. That was an element that started to create more trust within our managers, because a lot of the information that was coming out of there was about their departments. So they were able to read it, understand it, ask questions, and really help us roll out what we were going to do next. Because of course you have to get their buy-in. So we had to really explain what all this meant, and we even got some ideas from them on how we can move forward.
Great. Now, those were our first middle manager sessions. We did conflict resolution and emotional intelligence for the middle managers. How did that set the stage for you going forward?
Yeah, so like we were saying, it was 2020. By this time, it was like middle of 2021, maybe. There was a lot of trust. There was a lot of trust building all up until this point with our management, specifically with HR. Being that it was such a scary time, they really had to rely on us on so many things, on how are we going to keep our employees safe? What is the process if somebody has to come on site? We actually tested everybody when they would come in.
Oh my God.
Because we didn't want anybody to be sick. So we did everything possible to make sure everybody was able to be healthy and we do all that. So this was a time where trust really started to build, and that momentum started with HR and our managers. Because I don't know about you guys, but in the manufacturing world, they do trust you, but there's always that like, HR's calling you, or, you got the email from HR. So there's always that like hesitation, right? So this actually started to create more contacts or much more touch points, let's just say, with our managers and our employees. So there was a lot of trust building so they would come to us and really share with us what they were needing, a little bit more freely, a little bit more knowing that we had their back.
Which is good. That's good. Now, when we started, you were an HR manager. And one of the things we wanted to do was to expand your department.
Yes.
Now that you got this trust, how did the expansion really begin? Give me that history.
So even the trust started with me, even trusting my department more, and really knowing that there's only so much you can do. And I don't know if you guys in this room feel like your department, you may be a one-person department, or everybody in your team feels overwhelmed, or you're just like constantly saying yes and like feeling overwhelmed. That was me. I was very, I wanted to make sure that the department was running well. I wanted to make sure I was able to support whatever management needed. And during this time, there was a lot of conversations with what managers were needing, what we needed to do as a company, what did the owners want us to do. So there was a lot coming at us, and trying to divvy it up to where it made sense. During this time, our bandwidth we had no bandwidth. We were working 10, 12-hour days. So that's when we were saying, okay, we need some help.
Because how many people did you have at the time?
At the time, I only had 4 people in my team. And it really came down to, I needed to delegate. I needed to figure out what my role was going to be. I needed to figure out how I was going to justify to the owners why we need more people. And so here's where these metrics really matter. Why do you need another payroll assistant? Why do we need another safety person? And so I wanted to do all this, and with the help with Ida, be able to get some of this data together so that we can justify more hires. Because the last thing you want is to get some sort of fine, whether it's through OSHA or through your state if payroll isn't done correctly. So we wanted to get ahead of it. And so one of the things that we talked about was, okay, where is it where we needed to focus?
And I put all that in a report too, to substantiate it. How large is your department now?
Now there's 13 of us. We've also grown quite a bit, but as a department, we've grown quite a bit in many areas. We have now a designated TA division that only concentrates on our recruitment, our engagement, everything from those on the floor all the way to C-suite. Well, not directors, I should say, not C-suite. But that's their responsibility. Our safety division has also grown quite a bit because we knew as you are making more, you're making more money, your revenue is coming in, that allows a lot of opportunities to have some accidents. So we have a really good team that looks at it from all angles. We now have 5 buildings, and so we stay really busy, and that's where that trust comes in as well.
Great. Now, given the fact you're an HR manager and now you're a VP of HR, and you sit on the corporate as a board of directors.
Yes.
What did you learn in the promotions that you received over the last 3 years?
Yeah, there's so many things that you can do to justify, why you need more people. But if you're not somebody that sits there and says, "Oh, look at what I've done," that's not my style. I am not one to be like, "Look at all my successes." Many of you may be like that. I let my work speak for itself. And during this time, we were able to hire all these people that we needed for second and now third shift. And really start to develop leaders is really what we started to do, or I started to do, is I started making sure that all the individuals that we hired going forward were going to make our department better. So I didn't need another me. I needed somebody that was really good at X. For example, we got a really great training and development specialist. She came from Universal Studios. So there's all of these individuals that I was able to select to make our department better. And that kind of goes back to diversity. And that was something we had talked about, that you don't need somebody that is like you, that likes the same things. And it was interesting because as we would go into interviews, that was always top of mind. I didn't need to make sure that we went to the same school or that we, knew or grew up in the same area. That's irrelevant. I needed to find individuals that could complement the department and really in areas that, would make us better. But that also came with data. So as much as we don't like data, it's good to have it in your back pocket to be able to show why you need more people. So the survey was one, we continue to do that. And then we also continue to do annual surveys. So we were able to justify and back up from the recommendations of what you had said.
Now, in the report, I absolutely hated her applicant tracking system. She called it clunky. I said, let's dump it, right? So I convinced her to dump it. I was so proud of myself,
Yes.
right? And so as we were looking for it, I said, Lilia, we're going to look for a system that has artificial intelligence because we need more data. And part of what's driving that is because it took you over 99 days to fill a job. And when I looked at the data, I said, we got to do better than that. We got to do better than that. So I helped them put in a system that had artificial intelligence. Now I have to chuckle, even though they have a technology department, her department was the first one to do AI. How did that go over with the managers?
Yes, once they knew how it worked, they loved it. So we had a very clunky ATA system, which was not the best. We were able to switch to a platform that was really, and AI was not as big as it is today. It was literally what exactly is it going to look at? How is it going to help us rank candidates? So, but it was really, once we were able to explain how the system worked, they were really excited because, again, when we went through all the training on the unconscious biases that some may have, We all have them. And so there were some like, ooh, maybe I do that. So this system really ranked your candidates based on what you told it you needed. So you put your job description, it would match up the candidates. So as long as their resume didn't just have their name, it was able to rank them, which made it much easier than to try to go through, those 200-300 resumes you may get. And the process was just a lot smoother. So we started to utilize technology much more to our advantage so that we would be more efficient and be able to not do so many things manually. So that's where this system, the one we moved into, really collected all the information for us on the back end, and then you just grabbed it if you needed it.
And so what's your number now? You're at 99 or 100 days to fill. What are you time to fill now?
Now we're at about 29. So we still takes a little bit, but we do have some hard positions to fill, so that makes it longer. But the process is a lot smoother. Now we have a system where if our position isn't open, you can still drop in your resume, you can still tell us. We have a database even within our employees, which has been very helpful, where if somebody wants to, let's say, be in marketing or is interested in accounting, they can let us know. We have their resume and interest, and when the position becomes open, we push it out to them, to our internal candidates, because we definitely are a company that looks within first, see where our talent is at, and if we can bring somebody in into a promotion that's internal, that's our goal. But if not, at least we're able to find out who's interested. And if they don't get the position, we can always say, look, these are all of our other resources we have for you to be ready for the next position.
And then I harped a lot on brand. I know that the marketing managed the product brand, but I kind of was really beaten up about the employer brand. What happened with that?
Yeah, so we ended up hiring a talent acquisition manager, and we worked with marketing and our engagement team to come up with an actual employer brand, because everybody knows Dr. Bronner's and they know, oh, it's organic soap, but they don't know all of the benefits that we offer, all of the things that we do. So now we were able to work together to lay all that out, whether it's on social or in our marketing material. But the one that was really fun was we have a division that does a community engagement. So they're at mud runs, they're at different festivals. They're all over the county. Actually, all over Southern California is where they're at. And we worked with marketing to have an area where it was the employment area. So although HR wasn't there, they had a list of all the positions that were open. They had the whole rundown of what do we offer as benefits. They even were able to, they have a little iPad where if you're interested, you can send yourself the link or the QR code. You could do it later if you'd like. But if a lot of people have their resumes on their phone, whether it's saved on a cloud, and they're able to do it right then and there. So people were already out there. Our employees were already out there talking about how great it is, and they're having a great old time. And people always asked, "Are you guys hiring?" "Yes, we are. Come over here." So we were able to really tap into that. To that division that was already out there.
Now, this is the elephant in the room, because we had conversations a lot about this, that oftentimes you don't like to pat yourself on the back.
Yeah.
And I was always saying you need to play some politics to pat yourself on the back. What did you learn through this culture audit and this whole process about that?
Yeah. I started to do, instead of being like, oh, look at how great we're doing, it was more of, let's show how our numbers are helping the business. So whether it's time to fill, whether it was the revenue per employee, those numbers moving up. So we're constantly showing how we are doing as a department. But yeah, I'm still not very good at it.
I know you're not. But you were able to secure 2 promotions.
Yes.
And then be able to get onto the corporate board. How did all that happen?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, I've been with the company for 13 years, and I understand how the business works. I also know how to tactfully call out things that everyone's thinking. And as HR people, sometimes we're either you're really good at it or not very good at the delivery sometimes. I tend to be pretty good at it of like, what do we do about this? And be able to present it in a way where there's also some solutions, which I think is what got me to where I'm at today, because it wasn't just these are all the problems we have. It's like, this is what we're going to be working on because this is an issue.
Great. Any advice you have for people? Since you had department growth, you had revenue growth,
Yeah.
you had your career growth, what other advice would you give to people, or if you're going from a small department to a larger department, of making that happen?
Yeah, there's something I learned very later in my career is to be able to put some boundaries. And I know they've talked about this in some of the workshops. Put some boundaries and be able to say, I could do this, but it's going to take another person, or it's going to take an upgrade in software or whatever it is. Explore all options, but when you need the help or you need something, be able to show why you need it. Because I think everybody in this room wants to do their very best and wants to support the company as much as they can, but there's only so many hours and there's only one you. So once you're able to delegate, that's a big one, and be able to justify that, that's where it gets a little bit easier.
Yeah, because you were struggling with letting things go.
Yes.
I mean, that was. I remember that was a real struggle.
Yes.
And I remember having this conversation. Do you want to be CEO or not? And the look you gave me that day was like, oh yeah, I think I do.
Yeah, someday, yeah.
So what made the change? Because at that point, I noticed you started to let things go.
Yes. Yeah, it was really difficult for me to let go because, when you set it up, you want to make sure it gets done right, and you're like, oh, let me just do it. It is easier. I finally got to the point that I was taking my own advice that I would tell others. It's, just train somebody, let them do it. It's going to take some time, but it's going to free you up. I don't know how many times I said that to my managers, within the company. But now I started to take my own advice and really, investing some time, knowing it's gonna take a little bit, but you're gonna be able to let go. There's so many things I don't do anymore that we've been able to hire others that are much better at it. So yeah, it's a little scary. So be okay with that. But if you train them and you're mentoring them, that's what's going to matter. One thing that really stuck to me has been, you can't get promoted, you can't move up if you're the only one that does it. So you need to be able to train others. So that way when it's your turn, all right, we already have somebody in line, it's not going to be devastating. They're already lined up.
I noticed also the quality of people you were attracting were different, because even though you're competing with the big boys, you're not as big as they are.
Right.
Was that part of your mindset change as well?
Yeah, we during the pandemic, the remote work was something that was a big shift, at least for Dr. Bronner's. Prior to that, I think we had maybe like 5 people that were remote. That was a game changer. It really was. It allowed us to really be comfortable with employees working remote in other countries, in other states, in other counties. And what we learned from that was it is a trust thing, right? But if you, as the manager, are clear what the expectation is, that makes it that much easier to trust, because they know what they need to do, you know what they're doing, and that it just makes it easier. But that was a game changer. The remote.
Especially after we stole that person from Porsche.
Yes. Yeah, we
I'm a
got-
game changer. I go find the best people wherever they are.
Yes.
And that shocked you guys, didn't it?
Yes, when we had somebody from Porsche. But I think definitely it opened our eyes that if you are recruiting in other areas, I mean, we got people from all over. We got people from Netflix that were applying. We got, like I mentioned, Universal, like big companies that these people come from. And you're like, all right. Competing with the big boys. But yeah, it really allowed us to change the way we looked at the process. And again, looking to make sure that you're looking for those that are going to fill that gap of what you need. And at the same time, looking at what that looks like within your own department. Again, whether it's age, whether it's gender. I mean, we wouldn't think about that, but in HR, like my team was all women. So we were like, ooh, we need to get some men in here. And even ages really helped us get different perspectives. We have, and I had to smile because we have somebody on our team that is got hired on right out of college, all of this energy.
Oof.
And at first it was just like, oh my gosh, okay, like, hold on. Like, give me a second. But some of the ideas that has come out of him have been amazing. That has really added to our department. So yeah, there's all sorts of stuff that's been happening.
Now, does anybody have any questions? Because this is a good opportunity to ask some questions about the culture audit process, because it was a very involved process. Any questions at this point? Yes, ma'am.
How many employees did you have when you, at that time, as a culture auditor?
Did we have about?
We started at 226 and went to 350. So we started at 226 people and we went to 350.
And based on our projections, we're going to have about 400 employees by the end of the year.
Yes, ma'am.
How do you get the C-suite's buy-in to do the audit?
Yeah.
That was interesting, wasn't
That
it?
was interesting, yes. No, I mean, I think for us, at least at Dr. Bronner's, we want to know what we're doing right and where we could be better. And that's where it stemmed from, that we want to know what are some opportunities that we are missing. And as long as the executives know there's going to be some work, then you're going to be okay. But a lot of times they don't want to because it is going to be work.
But I tied it to revenue dollars. My background is I have a bachelor's in economics and an MBA. And when we first had the conversation, because remember this is right after George Floyd, and back then we called it the diversity culture audit. So instead of just saying, well, we want to do the right thing by people, that was not my stance. My stance was, your employees are your ambassador to whatever market segment that you're going in. The better the ambassador, the higher the revenue. Well, when we started, we were dealing with the president who understands marketing and market segmentation, which is why you did that way. He went, absolutely, that's a good idea. But now we still got to get the buy-in of the CEO because you got to spend a check. And so I made the point that if we do a better job of hiring better ambassadors in various markets throughout the country, we're going to increase the revenue. And that was the whole conversation. And I kept it at that point all the way through the audit. I remind people, yes, we're going through this headache, but this is just not a soft, feel-good moment. No. This is a revenue generator. Right? And then we had one Zoom meeting, and I was trying to make this conversation that we needed to go into the natural hair care market. And at the time, I started wearing wigs. And you know, for black women who wear wigs, we have cornrows underneath our hair. So I had been using their hair care products to let my hair grow out because I was coming out of a relaxer. And I couldn't make the point well enough. So in the middle of the Zoom meeting, I took off my wig. Yeah. and said, this is what happens in the market that you're missing, that people are trying to grow out their hair, and every black woman or Hispanic woman who's wearing a wig has cornrows underneath their hair. Are you going to seize the market or not? Now, it was hilarious.
We were like, oh, I didn't know what to say. I was just kind of like, oh, okay.
And then I had the nerves to say, well, let me turn off my camera and put my wig back on. But the matriarch never forgets it. Every time I see her, she chuckles about this wig scenario. But it opened up the door that these are new markets that we're going to cut. Now, why is that different? That is a different conversation to have HR lead. Because normally we only lead about the employees. We never look at the employee as a brand ambassador for the product. And every employee that you have is a brand ambassador. It doesn't matter what the service is, if it's soap, if it's IT, if it's education, if it's healthcare, it doesn't matter. Your employees are your brand ambassadors, and brand ambassadors create revenue. And so that was the first time we really started to talk about it, and we just kept talking about it and kept talking about it. And this went on for a few years, and that's where you guys are right now. You're talking about it all the time, right? From a revenue perspective. So HR has got to have a conversation about revenue. Don't shy away from the numbers, which is why we started with the revenue per employee, because I needed everybody to focus on, this is not a feel-good activity because of George Floyd. This is a revenue generator, because culture is a revenue generator. And once we had that conversation, and then I kind of sort of made some guarantees that if we get to this is what we're going to see percentage-wise. And we hit those numbers. And so you're going to have to talk about it from a revenue perspective, which means you need to know your data. Not just your HR data. You need to know the data that the CFO is having a conversation with. You need to know the data that the CMO has the conversation with. You need to know the data that's happening in that factory where things are being produced, and be able to have that conversation, because all of those people became her team member.
Yeah.
And now she's able to talk to them in their language in order to move things along. Because at the same time, like, they were automating the factory. I mean, it was a lot of things going on in the middle of this audit, right? So you have to learn the language of all of the other departments, but from a data perspective of being able to discuss it. And even more so, you didn't really like the data initially, right?
No.
And I remember saying to her about a meeting, in the executive meeting, I said, what do you talk about when you go into the executive meeting? And she looked at me like, what do you mean? I said, I'm going to produce reports that I want you to talk about in the meeting. And the look that she gave me was like, I'm not doing it.
Because again, I'm not the one that that says, look at how great we're doing. But that did shift the conversations of, like, because a lot of times in the department, HR, or I mean within the company, HR is not looked at as a revenue generator. Like, you just take up all this money. It's like, no. Like, we're here to make sure that the revenue that we make, we keep. And so if that conversation shifts, if your perception of the role of HR within the organization shifts, then those conversations start changing of, all right, well, how many people do we need for this new line? And how much is it going to cost? And, all of these different factors that you need. But yes, data ends up being your friend, so that you know how to talk to your leaders of what's going on, and that just opens up doors a little bit.
And then you also have to have a vision of where you think the company would go, because this is a third generation or fourth generation, fifth generation. And I remember saying to the matriarch, "We're gonna become $1 billion baby." Remember that conversation? And every time they would say something to me, "Is that part of the $1 billion baby playbook?" Because I had to remind people, this is not a feel good, this is revenue. We're on our way to get to $1 billion. This is how we're going to get there. So you have to keep it on the revenue tip and remind people every conversation that this culture that we're building is getting us to the $1 billion figure we're trying to get to.
Yeah. And I remember some of the conversations where it was like, we're going to be $1 billion company. And we're like, okay, it's not going to happen overnight. But we started to really start thinking of really laying down that foundation of how we're going to get there. How is this going to work? How can we be better because we want to have more money, we want to generate more product and revenue, but we started to get smarter about it. We didn't want we started really looking at automating with technology and equipment. So it didn't always translate into growth of individuals was growing as our revenue did. We were just learning to be more efficient.
And then what I was trying to get you to look at is that HR should be a strategy department,
Yeah.
which is why we kept having the conversation about the $1 billion baby.
Yeah.
Because it's about strategy of people. And because you do control the culture, you do control the people, so why should you not control the strategy? And when you start to make that mental shift, it shifts everything. The conversations that the executives have. And then I actually coach a couple other executives at the same time I'm coaching her. It shifts even the way that they saw HR and how they interact with HR and etc. So I think you just have to put it in the frame of reference that you are here to increase revenue. Increase it or retain more of it. But it's revenue driven. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to know, were you a department of one initially?
When I
You were?
Yeah, when I first got hired in 2012, I was it. They did have a part-time contractor for a bit, but he left about a year and a half after.
So you were doing both, basically, strategic and tactical work?
I was not doing a whole lot of strategic. I didn't even have the time.
Okay.
As we started to get more, adding more buildings and the revenue was going, that's when it was like, okay, I need some help. Yeah.
And then the other question I had was, what type of reports that you started producing when you had a seat at the table?
So we always looked at the revenue, the expenses. So once we had those types of reports, we were able to do this a little bit better, the revenue per employee. That's a big marker for us.
And then my last question
That's it.
is, you talked about you all had a database for the employees.
Mhm.
Tell me what that looked like.
Yeah, so prior to our TA division actually being TA, it was just kind of like in here. People would let me know, I'm finishing up school, I would love to work in accounting. Well, memory is great. Sometimes, if you remember. Or if you're the one that's doing that. Once we got a formal TA team, they came up with a strategy on how to let our internal employees know of opportunities. But we also did a job fair, an internal job fair, where we had every department come, and we have everything. We have marketing, we have special operations, and they're the ones that work on the ground to get our fair trade items, our raw material. We had everybody from accounting, IT. So everybody had kind of like the job fairs that you would go to. It was like they each had a table, and it was amazing to see all of our employees, and we're talking about everybody, our shipping and receiving, our operators, they were all there. We paid for their time to go and just check out what everybody does. But it was very exciting to see that we had some employees that were like, I would love to work in your, ours is operations admin, which is pretty much purchasing. To see, and they would say, I've done this before. I've done some project management. So it was really cool to see that employees were, one, having the opportunity to meet with that department because they may not otherwise, talk to marketing or talk to anybody else. One, make that connection with the manager, but then also the manager is saying, hey, I remember so-and-so was telling me they're doing a certification program. And, I really want to make sure they get the interest form. And it's like, of course, we make sure everybody gets it. So that's one way And then initially it started like a regular little database, nothing big. But now that we have a more sophisticated application tracking system, employees can put on their resume if they'd like. And whenever we have a position open, let's say in finance, we can look up who of an internal candidate was interested in that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
You talked about remote workers, and I'm in a manufacturing environment, but engineering as well. How did you convince, what metrics did you use to convince? Because typically it's that trust, right?
Yes.
What metrics did you use to drive that?
Well, one of the biggest metrics was talent, because we're in San Diego, so we're based out of San Diego. San Diego's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, not everybody can afford to live there. And you're only talking about one region. So once we were able to show, look, there's talent outside of San Diego that we can look at. And now we have the whole country to look at and be able to find talent rather than just San Diego County, and maybe we'll relocate somebody. And we were able to show if we do relocate somebody, it's going to cost, you know, $10,000, $15,000 to relocate them. And let's hope they're going to like it and they're going to stay. And we also used a lot of like the data that was coming out also on remote work. It was very premature at that point. Now there's a lot of better data, but we were able to show, look, the work is still going to get done. We had these huge sessions on communication and setting expectation, holding individuals accountable, because like I said, remote work was very, very rare. But that was something that really came out, something good that came out of the pandemic.
And what really turned the tide is that I found a person at Porsche. We had been looking for a talent access manager and acquisition manager, and I was like, you know what? I know you want to find somebody in the level of mid-market company that you are, but we're going to go for broke.
Well, and yeah.
Yeah,
So
and we
was
went
one
for
of those-
broke.
It was one of those, okay, you know where you're going. So yes, the talent may not be here. Let's look somewhere else and find that top talent. And that's where it really took off. It really started to, knowing that we had really high caliber candidates and hires that were really successful, just made it that much easier to keep it going.
And so I suggest that if you're gonna do that, you find the best talent you have. Let the talent make the decision whether they want the offer. Now I do have to laugh because on that particular that assignment, the person that we hired was way above the range. And when I said it to Lilia, she went, I don't know what we're gonna do that. I said, David is their CEO. I said, do I need to convince David that we saving all this money from relocation and we're just gonna put it into her salary? And that's what we did.
Yeah.
And so that opened the floodgates. But again, the reason we were able to do that is because that person was a high quality person. They had started the talent acquisition process at Porsche, had been there 15 years. So it's not like we're gambling.
Yeah.
We want the person to do the same thing here. So they've already shown that they can do it. They did it for a international company. Why can't they do it for us? And so my thing is that you have to know where you're going, because remember, my mantra is we're trying to become a $1 billion baby. So you have to have $1 billion players.
Yeah.
And so we started to look for those players, and we realized that they are very much attracted to Dr. Bronner's and the brand, and so they moved.
Another that may help was also for remote workers, because San Diego is so expensive. We were able to also attract other talent for those same dollars, but it'll go further in other areas. So that was another way we've been able to utilize that.
So any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
How did you attract your remote candidates globally? How did you go out there? Did you use a recruiter, or did you use the doctor here?
So we do have some global candidates. A lot of them came from our social media has a huge presence.
LinkedIn mainly.
LinkedIn was really good.
Yeah.
Our brand, a lot of the candidates that we get are those that are like-minded. They have some care for the environment. They either love personal care, cosmetics. So those are the people that typically will come to us. We started to really branch out in those areas. So social was a huge one. We really leaned into our social and marketing division, specifically on LinkedIn, because we have our own page on, I believe it's called Life, I think it's called.
Yes.
And so we were showing on LinkedIn what it's like to be at Dr. Bronner's. So we had videos of what like our volunteer day looked like, all these different events that we had going on. So that was another way to not just show, oh, there are soap companies. Like, no, like this is what the population looks like there. This is the type of fun that they have.
And that was owned by the HR department. A lot of times that's owned by the marketing department. But what we wanted to show is that this is a lifestyle change for people. And so if you come to Dr. Bronner's, you're going to be making a lifestyle change. Do you like the lifestyle that we provide? And what we discovered, people do.
We're super casual, laid back, so.
So any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I know Dr. Bronner's has a long history with family. I mean, did that affect how you went into getting buy-in or creating this, like, culture audit? Because I'm sure that was a huge part of it.
Yes, and for any of you that work for a family company, know the good about it and bad about it. But in this particular case, it was a good thing. We were able to get buy-in pretty quickly on what we were looking to do. Being that we're a soap company, but we are also a fighting company to always doing what's right, we knew that this audit was going to make us better, even if there was stuff that didn't feel good.
And then also what Lilia didn't say is Lilia actually works for the matriarch of the family. And unlike other companies where you just go straight to the CEO, when I started this assignment, I went and got permission from the matriarch because this is her baby. It survived her husband, and now she was passing it on to her 2 sons and daughter, and that I needed to make sure that they were in good hands. And so I met with the matriarch by herself, without her children, and asked her what did she want. And she said she wanted to make sure that they continue to the next generation to come, and if we could help steer her sons to make that happen, she would be eternally grateful. So we had to get buy-in from the matriarch. But Lilia, the matriarch, also is the CFO for a long time. And so Lilia has a really strong, when I say play in politics, she's being very kind, but she worked for the CFO and had a really good relationship with the CFO. And then when they started to see that she really knows these numbers, the actual matriarch gave us bandwidth to do things. I mean, they stretched the band. I mean, some of the things I asked them to do, I was just really stunned that they said yes, because I was really off into the deep end, right? But that's because I had the trust of the head of the family. And so if you work for a family-owned company, you have got to spend time with the person who's in charge. And they may not always be the CEO and the president, but at the end of the day, they have power in the family. And so we spent a lot of time between the 2 of us working on the matriarch.
Yeah. So hopefully, I mean, I love her.
I do too.
She's made me a better person in so many ways. But getting to know them, understanding their values, really also helps those conversations, because at least you know what direction they want to go in. You know when to push, and you also know when to, like, okay, I need to just wait. So it's just spending time with them, with the leadership, and knowing what they want. And because they are looking to retire soon, they really wanted us to make sure that we're ready to hand this off to the next generation, and hopefully it'll go on to the 6th and 7th generation. But yeah.
But thank you we're over our time, so thank you for our presentation. I have one last request. I actually wrote a book called Cultured Rewired, because this was a whole rewiring process. The book is actually on Amazon and other Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and Bulk Books and what have you. I would love for you to buy it as case studies. Dr. Bronner is one of those case studies of how you can rewire your culture, particularly for AI, because it's coming and it's not going to stop. So there's our QR code where you can go and purchase it. There's our contact information if you have any questions. We would love to talk to you about how our culture audit helps grow your business.